This again was prompted a little bit of the sort of not so much the flea markets, but estate sales. And so this is up, for weekends. I'm up in Dutchess County, so I get the emails. So I would say that a couple of estate sales, especially one, I felt some kind of connection to the dead owners, and it was about their stuff. I could tell that they and none of this turned up in the book, but I could tell they were Jewish. I got a mug for the Forward, the Jewish newspaper magazine, the Forward, and there were other things. And I have two bowls, but that I got there, and a plate that I love. And I just thought, I think my next book will involve estate sales, and I'll make my character the owner of that, or in this case, the inheritor. Her parents retire and hand her the reins. So that was it. And what I didn't know when I started, that she did get a lead to a really big fancy house in the town of Harrow, which is also where the Wayman Act is set, in Harrow. So she gets a lead, and it's a beautiful house on a beautiful street, and gigantic, many bedrooms. And it turns out it isn't just the bed and breakfast that it claims to be, but it's also a brothel. It's closed down now, so she has to deal with the owner, who described herself not as a working girl, not as a madam even, but as the house mother.
What's some of the comedy that you had fun with there? I mean, once you got going, what are some of the appealing? I mean, after so many years of doing this, and now you're still as amused as ever. What did that boil down to here that you had found you had the most fun with, tropes wise?
Well, let's one of the tours of the rooms, because all good estate agents tour and see what's what. So I had a little fun describing what were in these rooms, with just this like a double bed that took up the whole room, and kind of a warren of rooms on what used to be the attic. So I had fun with that, and I had fun with.
There's a funeral here that's pretty entertaining.
Thank you. That's the owner of the so-called, of the house, and the so-called house mother. She comes back she comes back where she's moved to San Francisco. So it was done, all the logistics were done long distance, but she comes back and sort of stops the show with a confession in her eulogy. So thank you. Yes, it's seems to be like, but another thing that was fun to do was to list things that people never bought, and that the children, the beneficiaries of this house, didn't want. They didn't want the gas grill, they didn't want the the Weber grill, they didn't want the left-handed golf clubs, the baby bumpers. That was fun. And when my editor first went through it, she asked me to sort of do more of that, and I thought, maybe one or two things, but the lists are they already take up 2/3 of a page, so no thank you. So that was fun.
And then, can you introduce us to any of the supporting cast that did play?
Oh, yes. There's her father was a math teacher at Harrow High School, and when they move away and say, "Guess what? We want you to take over the company," because she doesn't have. She's also had a couple of retail jobs in Framingham, and nothing great. She's got a couple of degrees she's not using. So they're really moving just to give her a job in a house. So then they say, the mortgage is paid, but there's all these monthly expenses. How about you taking in a boarder? And they've got it all arranged. And it is the former head of the math department, a widowed man, Frank Crowley. So, and he's he's 60 something, and, he's just the kindest person. So it was just such a pleasure to do him. And he's had like this thing he's wanted his whole life, which was to get a dog, because his awful dead wife didn't let him, even, he couldn't even listen to the Red Sox games with the volume on. So all he wants is a room and a TV, and then he asks Emma if he could get a dog. So Ivy, the dog, comes on the scene, and I had a wonderful time with Ivy, because I have a grand dog, half pit bull, half basset hound, a truly unattractive mixture. Brindle, but a wonderful dog, the best dog. There's always the in the pulse to, if it's a happy ending, then in this case, I needed a couple of different Harry, I wanted Frank, the boarder, to be happy, and I wanted Emma to be happy, and I wanted, it's fun to not make everything a traditional success, that I didn't want this to be this boondoggle of a sale, maybe just the opposite for various reasons. So but I didn't know the ending. I somehow suspected her parents might kind of come back for the big sale, and who knows. But there was a big surprise that I so enjoyed doing, that had to do with some criminality. There's a good one and a bad one. And they didn't work together. The young good cop, Luke, was just, he did everything right. I haven't announced it yet, but I guess I can. It's a sequel to The Inn at Lake Divine. First time I've said this in public. I was walking down the street, and it was time to write a new book. In fact, I had a 2-book contract, and Every Tom, Dick, and Harry was the first book in that new contract, and I had another one, and I even had a deadline. And I remember exactly where I was on West 57th Street, and I said, you know what? I think I'm going to try to write a sequel to The Inn at Lake Divine. So I ran it by Stacy Schiff first. She reads every chapter I write, and she thought it was a great idea, and so did my agent. And that's a book, The Inn at Lake Divine is a book that most people think is my first book. It's the book that they, in fact, Stacy described, when I told her about this, she said, for me, The Inn at Lake Divine, well, for my readers, The Inn at Lake Divine was the gateway drug. So it's usually the one that's the first book that readers of mine have read, and and it sold very well. And but it wasn't that. It was just walking down the street thinking I could return to those characters, because that was left a happy ending, of course, but still, what could happen next at this inn that had been a restricted hotel, and now it wouldn't be.